Indian River Connections.
Whoa. What happened?
Hi, everyone.
Indian River Connections brings you the first source you can watch for truth on board decisions in Indian River County. The Board Report, where taxpayers and policymakers intersect. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform to get notified when we go live on Fridays at 7 p.m. Visit IndianRiverConnections.com for more. Sponsored by Gus Curran's House of Champions.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Board Report brought to you by Indian River Connections. I'm Joann Binford, and joining me today is John Karapi, co-hosting with me. Hey, John, how's it going?
Hey, how you doing?
Doing good, doing good. So we've got a great show today.
What the?
So we've got Jennifer Pippin as our guest, Indian River County Moms for Liberty chairman, and Kevin McDonald, former school board member. And listen, guys, we've got a really good conversation because we had a school board meeting on Monday and they were talking about legislative priorities. And Jennifer Pippin's going to break it down for us. And so is Kevin McDonald. What do you think about that, John?
Well, I just, the school board meeting recently I saw, they were trying to change how they're going to have people doing speaking. And I just was like, here we go. Like, this is everything that brought us together is getting shifted now. So I thought that was kind of interesting that, here we are all these years later going to school board meetings and now we're dealing with this. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense why they're so concerned about it because the chairman can always stop a speaker at any time. So why do we need more rules? Why do we need more micromanaging of a meeting where it's supposed to be a public meeting where you're supposed to be able to redress your grievances with your elected officials? These are constitutional roles.
Exactly.
And they're trying to really stifle your First Amendment speech along with your First Amendment expression.
Yeah, it's about control, and we kind of seen that during COVID. So we kind of understand that it's all about control. It's all about follow the money, like we always say, and that's basically what you're seeing is just people following that line. Terry, that's what she does. Terry Barrenborg, that's what she does, and so you have to see, you have to watch what they're doing, and that's why we do the board report where taxpayers and policymakers intersect.
Yeah, and this next year coming up is going to be very interesting because I want to keep track of how she is voting on things and how she's reacting to issues because it's an election season coming up, right?
Exactly, and that's the big part of this show is going to be a big part of that, and the people that are waiting in the green room to come on after the next segment is a big part of why we have to keep doing this and keep all eyes on what's going on at all these different meetings all over the county and all over the state and actually nationwide.
Yeah, because policymakers kind of change their tone during election season, and then they start being more friendly with the citizens in town because they're trying to gather votes. So let's see how this rolls out over the next year, and we're going to bring it to you guys here at the board report. So make sure you tune in.
Yeah,
so
we'll see if they want to come on our show.
Yeah, hey, we need to bring them on. And Binford Chronicles will also be interviewing all of the candidates once they put their notice into the supervisor of elections that they are running. I'm going to be making all those phone calls and setting them up just like I did last time.
More practice makes perfect. You just keep doing what you're doing.
Yep. So everybody stay tuned for a compelling discussion on the importance of our school district meeting on Monday. We've got several topics to talk about. We'll have Jennifer Pippin on, and we'll also have Kevin McDonald, our former board member for the school board, and we'll be right back after this commercial break.
Tired of the same old workout? Come knock out your fitness goals at Gus Curran's House of Champions. Founded in 19 1996, right here in Vero Beach, Florida. Our Hall of Fame trainers will push you to your limits and beyond. Whether you're a beginner or a pro, we have the perfect class for you, including the one-of-a-kind Rocksteady Parkinson's training. So come join the fight and unleash the champion inside you. Give them a call, 772-713-1157, or go to gchouseofchampions.com.
Welcome back to the board report. I'm Joann Binford, joined by Jennifer Pippin, chairman of Indian River County Moms for Liberty, and Kevin McDonald, our former board member. How you guys doing?
Doing great.
Good, Joann. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Again, Jennifer, you did a great job at the school board meeting. There are some topics. Which one do you want to talk about first that really is on top of your list?
Sure. So for me, the biggest thing that I kind of took away from the school board meeting on Monday, and I'm sure Kevin saw it as well, is they're talking about different legislative priorities that they want to prioritize for the board for next year. And that's really important to see what is important to the board that is going to change education for students. And one of the things that I found very, very odd was they are trying to align some of their policies with the Florida School Board Association, which is the FSBA, which is a political organization out of Tallahassee, that they are aligning some of their legislative priorities to match that of the FSBA that they never even discussed at a superintendent workshop or prior. And now all of a sudden it's on their legislative priorities that they voted and approved on Monday.
Well, that's interesting because isn't Miss Barenborg part of that, a member of the FSBA?
Yes, she is actually on the board of the FSBA. So again, it's, kind of getting messy, and I sent an email asking questions. I haven't had a response yet. I'm sure they're trying to figure out how they're going to respond to me. But if they don't respond to me, I will bring it up at the next school board meeting and just say, why is this put on your priorities when it's never been discussed before? And Jackie Rosario did an amazing job of asking how many people did this affect, to put on as a legislative priority for the district. And the response was 30 students. So 30 students out of, the 14,000 students that the school district governs made this a legislative priority. And that's why I called it out at citizen comment before this item, because it should not be a legislative priority if only 30 children were affected by this and it was never discussed before in the public, at a superintendent workshop or at a school board meeting. So I'm asking for the transparency. Where was this talked about? If it was discussed in individual meetings, why was it not brought up? And the school board members did a survey and they picked their top 5 legislative priorities. So each one individually, and none of them picked this as a priority. It wasn't even on the list of priorities to pick from. So why all of a sudden is this quote unquote a priority when it's only for 30 students of the past school year and it was never even put on their priorities that they voted on with a survey?
Yeah, that's a very small number of students when you think the school has, and that's for the whole district, right?
That's correct.
So it's 30 students out of what, 16,900 students, something like that?
Yeah, I think it's even less now. I think the last
1450
count.
maybe?
Yeah, I think that's correct. Yeah, it changes, constantly, because as people are unenrolling and taking advantage of school choice, that, number that they govern goes down.
Yeah. What did you think, Kevin, about that? Did you watch the meeting as well?
Yeah, I did. And actually, I like and impressed by the idea that they are trying to align their legislative priorities with what their strategic plan is. And that's all well and good. And yet this came up that really doesn't, as Jackie Rosario made the point, it doesn't align with any of the things that they've got as priorities and wasn't discussed previously. And then all of a sudden this becomes a legislative priority, which makes you think it's more political than it is fulfilling something for our school district.
It certainly does sound that way with Berenborg being a member of the FSBA and putting this on there when the priority really should be low. They should be filling that slot with something that needs immediate attention, and because I was looking at their the 2025 legislative platform for their priorities, and even number 2, FSBA supports legislative efforts to allow districts to establish school start times. That's fine. But then it also goes on to say support using additional concordant scores or portfolios to demonstrate proficiency in required state standards to permit students to continue progression and earn a standard high school diploma. Am I reading that wrong? But it sounds like they're dumbing it down by saying that
it's giving a lesser option. I agree.
Yeah, they're giving other options other than the standard way of achieving and testing and succeeding.
Yeah, because when I was reading, I was like, are they lowering the bar again? I mean, they lowered the bar during COVID. Remember that? That was just horrific how they lowered the bar. I mean, some kids, they just gave them passing grades to move them forward, and they were literally failing. So I wasn't happy about reading that. I was like, am I really understanding this? It looks like they're lowering the bar.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the legislative priority that I brought up, and that was a pretty good topic of discussion if anybody wants to go back and watch the meeting. So the first part of the meeting was the presentation. So for an hour and 4 minutes, I believe it was just presentations. But if you want to get to the meat and the potatoes of the meeting, you could start at, an hour and 5 minutes in. But the one that I questioned was, and their legislative priorities, I think, are decent. It's not everything that I would have picked, but it is, the cumulative of the 5 school board members, right? But the one that really irks me is allow for a period that is shorter than the current 90-day calendar period, specifically 45 days, to take action when there's 5 unexcused absences or absence that the reasons are unknown. So the problem with this is, I brought up, they're talking about wanting to change in one of our policies that out of school suspension would be unexcused. So let's say, God forbid, a child does get into a fight or makes a wrong choice and they get an out of school suspension. It happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's say they get into a fight and they get out of school suspension for 5 days. Okay. Absolutely warranted, should not be fighting on campus. We don't condone violence. But now the superintendent has the authority to take the parents to truancy court because they got out of school suspension, and that is 5 days unexcused, what they're wanting to change the policy to. So that's going to put parents in an awkward spot because they can't take their children to school, right? Or drop them off at school, or they can't drive themselves to school if they're in high school because that's considered trespassing. But now, under the direction of Dr. Moore as a superintendent, he could take those parents to truancy court or, go through that court process. And that's what I brought up. Like, that's a problem. If children are not allowed on campus and they get out of school suspension, again, absolutely warranted. It needs to be excused because they're still making up that work at home through Canvas, which is the online system that children use if they're sick or hospitalized or out of school suspension or something like that. So that's why I brought it up, because I'm concerned that this is going to be possibly an attack on parents, and cause so many more problems. And again, it was never discussed. It was never, talked about. But if you look at the FSBA priorities, that is their second priority on their legislative platform for next year.
Right. And so the answer is because she's now got a role on that board, and that's their priority. She's pushing that priority on their behalf rather than for the benefit of a non-existing issue in this county.
Yeah, and I agree with Jennifer, because when you get out of school suspension, you're not allowed on campus. You're breaking a law if you go on campus, so you're forcibly off the school campus. You're not being truant. You were kicked off.
That's right. And I just think, in the future, this could be an issue, or if you have a student who's struggling with some issues and maybe they make a wrong choice and, bring a vape to school or drugs, something like that, where now, they're getting out of school suspension, they're doing their work at home, and they could potentially be taken to court or have legal actions taken against them. So I've been asking chapter chairs of Moms for Liberty across the country and across the state. And for the most part, there are some districts that say it is unexcused, but for the most part across the country, it is excused because it is a discipline that a school district gave to a student and family, and they have to make up the work.
And they could create another category, excused due to discipline. It doesn't fall into an unexcused category, but makes that delineation, and it doesn't necessarily offer approval for what had happened. And you make the cases of a child vaping, but it could be a case where one child, brings another into a fight. They both end up getting suspended, and the quote unquote innocent victim now is out of school and is now a truant.
Right. And suspensions can be 3 days. They could be 5 days. They could be a 10-day suspension. Or how do they deal with an expulsion?
Right, exactly. Well, and one of the school board members in another county brought up to me when I was asking her, hey, is it excused or unexcused in your district? And she had reached out. She was concerned about it going against the schools for their ADM, which is their average daily membership. Will it affect funding? If it shows that, X amount of students have unexcused absences, all of your children receiving OSS. So she was concerned as a school board member, and I'll say it in Martin County, that the count would go against their ADM, which, again, could affect federal or state funds coming to their district. So she said, absolutely, she would not put that on the agenda to even vote on. And she's on FSBA. And she said, I didn't even realize this was one of the priorities. So this is something that's very, red flag to me. Like, there's a lot of people that are not talking about it. They're just putting it on their legislative priorities. And to me, as I'm still researching and not getting any answers at the school board meeting, it's throwing up a lot of red flags as a parent and a citizen, taxpayer in this county for sure.
I'd be surprised if Moore didn't recognize that and wasn't concerned about protecting that and the impact that it has to the school district. He did bring up the fact that Miami was at a 95% attendance rate and we're at 89%. So I can't imagine that he would do something that would reflect upon that attendance rate negatively.
Yeah, right. Because they do FTE counts in the very beginning of the year. They have like 3 FTE counts, and that affects your teachers, how many teachers you can hire, if you have to let go of teachers. I mean, they are so like, everybody come to school, be at school, especially on those days. And then for this you would think that Berenborg would even know the detriment that it would have to the school, because she's been a teacher and she's been in education forever. So she knows how the school makes money and she knows how the school records students and how it affects FTE and funding. So it's kind of interesting that she would want this, she would support this as an initiative.
It does feel like there's a little bit of a conflict of interest between our school district and the FSBA board that she's newly aligned with.
Right. And the law states, and I said this at the school board meeting as well, the law states that a principal or a principal's designee can contact a home if a child is absent. So let's say, for example, my son's absent from school, just so people know that if they don't have children in public schools, you get an email. Joann, you know this, right? They send an email home and they send a Connect Ed call home. So whether they miss one period or the whole day, parents get a call home, parents get an email. So parents know when their children are skipping or missing school, right? So even if my child skips school, I'm getting those notifications. But it also says in the law that a principal or a principal designee can call home. So there's 3 options that a school can do to let parents know that their children's missing or see what's going on. So now if you have a student that's out for 3 days and there has been no contact, a principal or principal designee, which is, usually an AP or a dean or something of that nature, can call home and say, hey, why has Johnny missed 3 days of school? Maybe Johnny was hospitalized. Maybe Johnny had a death in the family. Maybe Johnny, is having some severe issues and he needs to stay home for his mental health. Whatever
Right.
the reason is, there's so many reasons that it can, be contacted with the parents. So I don't understand why this is turning into a priority or why it's even considered as one of our top problems when, again, there's multiple ways to be contacted and it's only affected 30 children in the past school year.
Right.
hmm there's another initiative in there that kind of concerned me, and that was number 5, education funding and fiscal responsibility. So it was talking about increase the mental health allocation to permit additional evidence-driven mental health services and providing up to 20% flexibility to school districts' recruitment and retention efforts for school social workers and guidance counselors. Just the idea that schools think that they should be in the mental health business really concerns me.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. Yeah. And a few of the school board members, unfortunately, did vote for that on their top 5 priority. So that's why it's landed there. And this is just going to be an ongoing issue. They're going to continue to blame COVID and everything for this when, they were the policymakers that, closed the schools down and had these extreme mandates and things like that children suffered. And when we told them, we went to the school board and told them, didn't we, Joann, how many times that, this is negatively going to affect kids. And now they're trying to get more funding for the problems that they caused. So it's kind of, there's a lot of hypocrisy on this legislative platform. I agree.
Yeah. And they didn't just cause the problems with the COVID. They caused the problems with the books. They caused the problems with, transgender stuff. It's like, to get out. I don't want the school. I don't feel confident that the school is responsible when it comes to mental health. They just haven't had a track record of being, and they're not professionals in the mental health field. The guidance counselors and the social workers, they're not really mental health psychiatrists, And
you have to question who is getting that role, and what's the mental health of the person who's supposedly counseling the children.
Exactly.
We have a lot of really great teachers, but there's the occasional one who you might question, and you're hoping that they're not giving mental health or any other kind of counseling to the children.
Yep, exactly. So guys, we're going to take a break. We're going to head to a commercial break and stick around. We'll be back and we're going to do the panel. And everybody's going to join us to have more discussion on this because there's a lot of information here and people have a lot of questions. So let's head to the commercial, guys, and we'll be right back.
Warrior Shield Foundation is here to unite, honor, and provide support for veterans, first responders, and Gold Star family members. The foundation will enable them to find the help they need through direct assistance or by connecting them with our shared vision network. Using data-driven models, we provide solutions that make a long-lasting difference. We, along with our partners, are dedicated to bringing together like-minded groups and individuals who have committed to making a difference in the lives of our hardworking, everyday heroes. We bridge the gap by connecting warriors or their families with the assistance they deserve and require, such as service dogs, wheelchairs, counseling, scholarships, and team-building retreats, to name a few. You can help right now to make a difference for those who have helped and protected us all. Warrior Shield Foundation, selflessly doing for those who need it most.
It's a long way to home, but you won't take the hard road all alone. Just look to your left and look to your right. You were born to fight.
Indian River Connections brings you the first source you can watch for truth on board decisions in Indian River County. The Board Report, where taxpayers and policymakers intersect. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform to get notified when we go live on Fridays at 7 p.m. Visit IndianRiverConnections.com for more.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Board Report. I'm Joann Binford, joined by our panel. We've got John Karapi with TGI Now. We've got Mike Bollock with To The Point Podcast, Kevin McDonald, who is our previous board member, and Jennifer Pippin, our champion, Moms for Liberty. How's everybody doing?
Good news.
Great.
So, John, you were backstage. What do you think about all this that's going on? You're quiet.
John's
Turn up
muted.
the volume.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, there he is.
There he is.
Well, like you said, it's all about the policymakers and what they did during COVID and everything else that we tried to tell them. That was, you can't do this. This isn't what this isn't what your role is at this point. You have to listen to the people. The people, are the ones that you work for. So we're just starting to see that now, where people are starting to realize that this is what's happening, and we have to be more vocal.
Yeah. How about you, Mike?
They've made some decisions this past week, I guess, that kind of is, it makes me wonder. Like you said, the legislative priority is questionable. Like there's more pressing issues facing our school systems across the whole country, and that we should be addressing here local, no matter where local is to you. But in moving principals around, which, okay, I get some shifting staffing, but some of them didn't make sense to me. I don't know if I'm just the only one a little surprised that somebody goes from a top educator to a director over food and beverage. But besides that, I don't know the characters involved. As far as the schools trying to get involved in the mental health, which I just did a podcast with Sheila Matthews featuring Able Child, and what their mission is as far as the informed consent and stuff like that. And this is like right up that alley. Same with Moms for Liberty. It's like, you're not psychiatrists. And it's been going on forever. Since they've made Ritalin and they've graded schools on a grade level themselves, this has been a problem. I've talked about it all the time with the FCATs 20 years ago. If they can label a kid ADHD and get them on some type of antipsychotic or psychotropic drug, that kid's scores didn't count against the school's overall rating. So, and I don't think that's the case now, but it seems like it's a scapegoat. Schools shouldn't be in the business of referring drugs to any kids or anything in that matter when it comes to porn. But I think there's specialists out there that maybe a referral can be made, but I think that's the extent of it.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not comfortable with anybody in the school system diagnosing my child.
Mm-hmm.
And thank God for legislation that's been passed that says that now there has to be parental consent, because there was never that before. I mean, anybody who had children in the public school system. So even, I'll be honest with my son, I won't even let them check his eyes because we have an eye doctor. I will not allow the schools to check him for scoliosis. We have a primary care physician. He has a pediatrician. So I like that they are following the law and allowing parents to, opt in or opt out for all of these things. And I tell parents all the time, listen, opt out of everything unless you need that service. But the majority of our membership with Moms for Liberty, they don't trust, what has happened over the past 5 years or more. So a lot of them are opting out and having their own physicians, their own mental health counselors, be the guiding light for their children.
I did a story on To The Point podcast, probably going back a year now, maybe more. And it was about a mother in, I want to say it was Kentucky or Indiana. And it was one of those deals how, the school checks for scoliosis, but this was teeth cleaning. and they wanted the mom to consent to having. She had 2 kids in the system, and they wanted the mom to consent to the tooth cleaning, and she didn't feel like it was necessary because they had their own dentist and they get their own cleanings done. And the school went back and forth with them, and somewhere she signed her name to something, and that's all they needed. And because she didn't follow through with it, they went after her for child neglect, almost took her kids from her, because she would not have those kids. So the kids ended up getting tooth cleanings from this dentist that was working with this school district, and then referred for dental work that the family dentist said was uncalled for and stuff like that. So there's definitely like suspicion when it comes to the public-private partnerships we see some of these school boards make. I mean, that ties into these other organizations like these NGOs like CSAC. Do we trust these people? We don't trust them with our money and with our kids. So how far do we let it go?
It's funny because Peggy at the last meeting made it a sort of impassioned plea for public education, and she said, we're in a fight for public education. What should we do? And then she listed a few things. We get the best teachers, we get the best administrators, we get a good board that's paying attention to this. But she completely omitted and doesn't recognize that the biggest threat to the student population that they've got is what they've been doing for the last 5 years and what people saw them doing during COVID. And they recognize that, hey, you're not doing the right things. You're not doing what the parents want. And you, in some cases, you're really off the rails, as they were with the books and with other things. So the thing they really got to do is they got to become a very parent, family focused and centric on what they do. And they have to recognize, you have to let go of the reins and recognize it's not their little game to play anymore. Their job is to know what the parents want, reflect what they want, and serve that need. And if they can't find the way to do that, parents can now go to other alternatives, and that's the risk for them.
I agree, and I couldn't agree with you more. But unfortunately, I would make a guess as an estimate as to what percentage of parents of children in our school district are letting and are okay with the school district raising their kids and making those decisions. Like, I don't know any parents who attend school board meetings or pay attention unless it's a political thing or a race thing in the political hemisphere. But unfortunately, I mean, half our population is probably okay with the school district making these decisions and diagnoses. Am I alone in feeling like this, or
No,
and how do you pick the stats? You'd probably hit it. I don't know if it's half, but obviously the ones that care the most and have the resources, and now the voucher system gives them the resources, they go to an alternative because they want a better level of education. So to the detriment of the public system is they've got to take the people who don't care enough to look out for their kids, and those children, those parents hand off the responsibility to the schools, and so those schools somewhat rightly believe that those are their kids now. In many cases, the parents abdicated their full parental responsibility for so long that they've got justification for feeling this way, though it's not their role.
Yeah, well, you hit it right on.
Sadly, for some kids, if it weren't for the school district, they might be in a worse off place.
That's true too.
And then extreme, I guess, circumstances, but
they build relationships with these teachers, and that's what it comes down to. They're with these teachers more than they're with your parents or with the kids. I mean, that's what I started to realize over the years, seeing my son build these relationships with certain teachers, and you realize, like, wow, like that's close to where they're almost like, that's my kid, like these are my children. That's the teachers look at it that way. And so sometimes it gets to be a little bit too much with that, and that's part of the by design part, to separate the family from the process of having the schools take care of their kids, dental, all the medical, pills, just going to ask your doctor if your kid needs Ritalin. And I did it to my kid. I experienced it. I watched it happen in real time, and I was just like, wow. And I allowed it to happen, but you have to wake up to the fact that it is happening and say to myself, like, wait a minute, like, Why are they telling me to have my doctor check my son to see if he's got some kind of ADHD and if he needs medication? I should be able to make that decision. Say, wait a minute, like this is my choice, not the doctor's choice or the school. Because like you said before, Mike, the teachers are the ones that refer it. They're the ones that initiate it to go, you might want to have your doctor, do a little test for your kid to see if he needs any medication. Like they literally are like funneling it to the schools. And like you said, how many parents are letting that happen because they don't know any better? That's why we have to let them know, be careful.
And they're trusting. They're trusting, in which they should be able to trust, authorities. But this day and age, you don't know who the good guy is or what they're working for.
It's natural for every organization to want to grow and garner more of whatever it is. So it's not unnatural for a school district to want to bring in more responsibilities. To say these children need this, and now I'm in mental health. These children need this, now I'm in medical health. And it's a natural from the standpoint of wanting to build the organization, but also the standpoint of saying we want to do what's right for the children and secondarily serve the parents. But it's a natural thing, but parents need to recognize that. And it's for your government as well as your school district and your teachers. You have to recognize this is natural, and you got to take your role and your responsibility in countering that. And if you don't, you've abdicated to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, our school district has a lot of really good teachers. I mean, my daughter and my son went there and there were some really good teachers. And sometimes they're just inundated with all this. Now they have to have meetings with the guidance counselors because they get so socially involved with the kids. It pulls them away from being better teachers. And just like the kids that do have issues, when, they get pulled out of crucial classes for ad litems or to come in and talk with them. There's got to be a better schedule for that. And then
along with that, not to cut you off, concerning, I've heard rumors that we're losing teachers in the elementary schools that do specials because their workload is being increased with these new sixth grade being added to these elementary schools. Like they're not adding teachers that do these specials, but they're adding teachers that do those the academics, I guess. So I've kind of seen it in Fellsmere, and it's a little concerning. I don't know. I don't have the inside scoop, but like you said, these teachers, I think they deserve recognizing. Mm-hmm. And this is the place we can shout them out if we have feedback, which I'm actually working on some feedback from a shout out. It was actually from a family relative that had no idea who this person was, but we're going to post that later. And I'd like to shout out one of those special teachers is, I know her and I'm forgetting her name, Charisse Courtney. She was the music teacher at Fellsmere Elementary. She's not returning next year from what I understand. But if my videos don't do it justice, what she's done with these kids for the last 4 years, but she's taught them to play piano. Some of them are moving on to violin, and she's now, I guess, working with the Gifford Youth Orchestra and moving on to better things. But teachers like that, teachers in academics, I think they need that recognition and support, in the community. Because like you said, there's a lot of good ones, and they build relationships with these kids. And I think it goes unspoken of.
Yeah. And the other thing I'd like to bring up is, the school being able to recognize when an NGO that they're involved with is not really meeting their quotas. I mean, for example, we like Moonshot Moments, but Learning Alliance is tied in with that. And where has Learning Alliance benefited our kids over 10 years, 11 years now? And they still haven't met their quotas. So the school needs to be able to say, hey, we love you guys. We've worked with you all these years, but we need to fire you. You haven't met these quotas. But they seem to get in bed with them, and then they lose their ruler of what's benefiting them and what's not. And in the meantime, the taxpayers are being charged for all of this nonsense because it's really not helping our kids. Everybody loves the Moonshot bus. It looks cool. It's reading, but how is it increasing our academics in these kids?
not doing anything. And I was in the nonprofit sector for a long time in this town, and I went to all the Moonshot Moment events and all the things that they do and all the things that they're saying they're doing. And I can tell you from firsthand experience that it's all just word salad. It's just all crap. It's not really doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that's just,
it is
true. It's the truth. It's sad.
and all that money is going to administration to breed us these bogus data, and then telling you have to invest in your kids or they'll be in prison later on, and the fear factor thing. But I just wish that the school would get some cojones and say, hey, we had a great relationship, but we need to try something else, just like Moore is trying to try something else with the schools being more competitive with curriculum. Let's move away from this learning alliance and find something else to work with. Spend time on something else.
I think we've seen it firsthand. The schools or the children that are challenged with the school choice. Like, again, full disclosure, my daughter in the dual language program and in the music and the instruments, and that program are excelling higher than average scores when it comes to the testing. So, and it's almost, and literally half their day is in a foreign language. And I think that's just another level of challenge, and like those other schools with the STEM, and where they can influence and inject that challenge into the daily academic learnings. I think it's great. I do want to welcome Troll to our comment section. Troll follows all of our podcasts. He's one of our number one fans, maybe Joann's number one fan.
Hi, Troll.
He's great. He definitely brings an independent view to the comment section. So thank you. He speaks Korean. I don't even know how to say that. Yeah. But anyways, you can't hear everything Troll says either. So I've learned, be careful what you put on screen.
Your comment about the NGOs, I was surprised to see it last Monday that apparently they got a little program where they collect up money from students in schools, and they collected up about $1,500, and they gave it to a small little NGO that has nothing to do with education, and doesn't have much of a track record. And
tell me more, please. Which organization is this?
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's
Team Success.
That's it. Team Success. And
I
so
quit.
I did a quick check there. They had $64,000 in revenue in the last report and $74,000 in spending. So they're $11,000 in the red. And I'm going, and it's not. It has. They're looking at homeless and other things, very tangential to things that are going to support our educational system. And I was very surprised that that's where they get kids, saving nickels and dimes, and it's going to that. The whole NGO thing is something that's very confusing and out of control.
This organization, allegedly founded and ran by, I could be wrong, allegedly a felon or somebody that's got a rap sheet that's trying to do some good. There's reasons why this person got into the charitable run, but it is kind of weird because you see them do a lot of work at the sheriff's office with other felons or incarcerated individuals. What is it they're going to do for education?
It didn't seem like there's going to be that much for education, and it's you mentioned the background of the founder is a little bit of an issue, but the bigger issue is it's not really an education related thing that we should be putting that money into.
Right, and that person also was part of PTA and partnered with LGBTQ ABC LMNOP. And so,
and also
allegedly a paid activist, also allegedly.
Yes, and sits on CSAC.
You're not suing me, you bastard. Sorry.
Sits on CSAC, so their job is to give away county money to NGOs. And so now you see the circle of funds going around where you've got people on CSAC that are part of NGOs. They're distributing money to other NGOs. and some of it may come back to the school, and the school's giving them money, and the appearance of conflict of interest.
How long is the CSAC been around? Do you know?
Since 19, I want to say 97 or 98.
And that's funny.
Like 20 years, more than 20 years.
And I was a nonprofit for, close to 15, almost 20 years. And I didn't really even know about this CSAC money and all that stuff too, to be honest with you. I was completely oblivious of that was what they were doing until recently. So that's one thing that I was not in the loop with, that I wasn't able to get funding for some of the nonprofits I work for to get funding for that. I know that the Environmental Learning Center was getting money for that, and they were trying to cut that from this because the school district was giving the Environmental Learning Center money for summer camps and things of that nature when I was working there in 2017. But I don't remember if they were getting any of that money. Some of that money was getting cut, but I think that's how they funnel it back around, is through CSAC. It makes sense now.
Yeah. So what I can tell you is I've been meeting with some of the county commissioners. I've met with 3 out of the 5 so far, asking about CSAC. And CSAC was originally to help. So it's Children's Services Advisory Council, for people who don't know, to help children. And they only started out with $60,000. And what they did was they helped NGOs get started. So if they were going to start doing something for children to help, basically if these services were not provided, they would end up going to Medicaid for the services, or the county at some point would have to pay for them. Well, it's morphed into this now, $3.4 million. It's not startup funds anymore. And, you look at Learning Alliance, where they made $19.8 million in 2023. Their 2024 stuff hasn't been released yet, but they got $450,000 from CSAC. They grossed $19.6 million and still got more money. And they got money from the hospital district. I believe it was $50,000 or $250,000, somewhere in that range. And now they're petitioning Governor DeSantis for $250,000 more dollars. They just put out and through their emails, and they're just getting all of this money when their revenue is almost $20 million annually. And it needs to stop. There needs to be a cap on these organizations.
Well, it's literally it's literally turned into a social program.
Yeah. Well, yes, makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
The CSAC rules and regulations, it used to be like 2 pages long. Now it's turned into this conglomerate booklet of social, health, family counseling, fatherhood. It's including parents and stuff that they can do at the hospital, literally, maternity and all that stuff. It's turned into this great big thing. And when you watch CSAC come up to ask for more money, it's more like the county commissioners are saying, okay, you're asking for more money, you did all the work. They're not even researching it. They're not like really asking any hard pressing questions. They're just like listening. Well, nice. Thank you for doing such a good job. You work so hard. Yes, you could have another $1 million.
There's no data. There's no measurements to speak of, and it ends up being the people who know the people who know the people are the ones that disperse the money, get the money, share the money, and it moves around.
So people and who's on the subcommittees.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's what's right, because some people that are on the NGOs are also on the committee. So
isn't the Learning Alliance, person on CSAC, if I remember correctly?
One of them is.
Yes, one of them is. So if Learning Alliance wants more money, hey, your options of getting that request for more money increases, because you're right.
That increases, that makes it. That's where you get on committees like that. So you're rubbing elbows with the people who are going to disperse money back to you.
And then they didn't want me to be on it. No wonder they didn't want me on it.
I asked the county commissioners that I met with, isn't that a conflict of interest? And I was told that when it comes up to their organization that they serve on a board or they're a member of, they abstain from voting. But I said, okay, that's fine. That's one vote, but they are there to be able to talk it up. So like, let's say that we were an NGO. Let's just say it's the Indian River Connections asking for $1 million. Let's say I'm on the committee. Yeah, I don't vote, but I can talk to everybody before they vote on my organization and say, hey guys, also, by the way, we did da, 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 da. Okay, now I'm not going to vote. So
in this field, though, sunshine laws don't account. This is not jurisdiction under sunshine laws.
Nope.
No,
So
it's a
that you're right.
committee.
There's a lot of backdoor deals or corruptive conversations.
Waste
Right.
for all your views.
You can influence people just by telling people weeks in advance and always promoting it like a salesperson. Oh yeah, we did this. Oh, look at these pictures. Oh yeah, look at what we're doing. And then when it comes to that voting time, everybody, you've already subliminally put it in their heads. What a great organization. I'm going to give you this money.
And that there's no doubt about that, because even in the nonprofit sector, like, you know, when I was doing grants and things of that nature, submitting them to certain organizations like the Johns Island Foundation, and then you had somebody that you knew and they were on the board and they were on my board, the same thing. It's just, it all funnels the same way, just in a different facet. There's no, like, you know, you don't have to.
But maybe there should be legislation that expands sunshine laws to public-private partnerships and NGOs.
Yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree. Yeah, they were doing that. You know, that even happens in the medical field. When you're a medical director for a certain health agency, you get a check because you're referring business to them. You're referring patients to that agency. It's the same thing. It's very similar. There's nothing that governs it.
And look, it's the county commissioners that can decide how this CSAC works. They're the bosses of CSAC. And
or
even
they can
when
eliminate it. Right.
Yes, they can eliminate it. And I'll tell you what, it's still on the table. They have left it off the table since they got kicked off the idea of turning it into a trust, but that hasn't gone away, guys. They're still in the back ends wanting to make that a trust, and that'll be the worst thing for this county if that becomes a trust.
Another taxing district.
And that's why it keeps growing and growing, because when they initially tried to make that a trust, those millage rates were set, 3 increasing millage rates over a 12-year period, where nobody would vote on it till after the 12 years, because once it gets on the ballot, it only goes away by vote on the ballot. And that would be there forever and ever and ever and ever. And
so, like where you're going with this, the tax part of it, what is your opinion on the sheriff's proposal in raising the millage in that tax district?
See, the thing
he's asking for up to 1%.
Yeah, the thing I don't like about the sheriff is that he gets to spend it no matter what his proposal is. When he goes up to county commission, he gets the money, and then he can change that proposal when it gets to his desk. That's what I don't like, because we need to support our law enforcement, but the law enforcement is the officers, the guys that are out on the street every day. I'm sorry, Sheriff Flowers is not doing the dirty work like his deputies are. His deputies are out there doing the dirty work. You know, he's upper echelon, so he's not in the field, in the war field every day like they are. And those guys need to get paid and need to be well taken care of. But if we just keep giving him money and he's going to buy all these other things, and he's invested well in some things, I'm okay with Sheriff Flowers as the sheriff compared to what my choices were. I supported him, but he needs to invest in our guys and training, the constitutional, and especially constitutionalism, because they are constitutional deputies. And I've talked to some deputies, and they don't understand their constitutional role. You know, some do, but there's still improvements to be made. And I don't like all of the plate readers and all that stuff. And
they're excessive. They're literally plate readers going into the Home Depot parking lot.
Yeah, I know they're helpful, but
not at an intersection. It's going into a parking lot. I've seen them going into neighborhoods. Now, they are helpful, I think, in general areas. Maybe like they found the guy with the stolen car that they killed that wasn't armed. But this yesterday morning, I believe it was, they were able to triangulate this guy somewhere in Gifford. But they are helpful. But I think we're a little excessive.
Too much.
Yes, this is not. It doesn't look like America. When you realize what those black poles are with the little solar, and I'm 100% Law and Order kind of guy. This is
Yeah,
a little,
and
this is a
those
little-
programs.
we never needed them before. So why do we need them now? We
Well,
didn't
and
need
those,
them before.
yeah, and
That's
those
the point.
programs, like I can see, I can see using them to some extent, but those
Yeah.
programs, unless you have legislation or something that says you cannot use the face readers, because they are so advanced now, they can read your plate from far, far
Oh, yeah.
away. They can scan your face in your car now. And he's way back when I was talking to Flowers about it, he says, yeah, ours don't do that. But then when I did a little bit of research on the actual program itself, they did come up with a program that integrates with it for facial recognition.
Sure.
So at any time,
I
he
remember
can do that.
when we were talking to him, they do look at the face only after something pings via the license plate. They'll look at the other picture and see, okay, yes, this is the person we're looking for. But it's not initiated by facial recognition. But the picture is
Oh, it
taken.
could be done.
He said that because I remember doing that X space with you, Joann, with Sheriff Flowers, and that was because this was like a big deal for me because I mean we're living a police state, but
Right.
I do want to ask.
To the question of the budget, though, as I sat through the sheriff's presentation twice in the last 2 weeks on it, and he's asking for another, I think it's $14 million. $9 million of that is earmarked to go towards increasing salary rates. And I think that when you do budgeting and when they review budgeting, the county commissioners should be looking and saying, he shouldn't be telling them we need to bring our starting salary from 50 to 55 or 60. They should be saying, why is our starting salary at 50 and Fort Pierce is 55 and Port St. Lucie is going up to, I think it's 58 or 60,000. And why are we
St. Lucie's like 60,000 and up.
Right. And
Yeah.
we have our teachers starting pay is in the high 50,000s. So that if the county commissions were really on top of it, they'd be looking at this 1, 2, 3 years ago and say, why is this not better? It's a people business. Why are we not taking the right care of our people? And they should have had that already. So that's 9 of the 14 million. The other 5 million is for other things. And he's got an organization. He's going to ask for more, and he's going to try and get more to do more because that's his job. And that's what he's focused on.
Yeah,
so
and
the county commissions have to do their job and say, I know you want to do a better job, so we have to rein you in a little bit. And it's whether or not they do that part of the job is what really comes into play.
Yeah,
Well,
and
unfortunately, financial acumen hasn't been the county's top priority in the last year.
no.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So-
But he does have good training programs, for his depth. They are well trained in a lot of areas, and that's why it's easy for them to leave and go to St. Lucie. Just like our firemen, they have a better training program here than they do in St. Lucie. And St. Lucie is benefiting because they're not increasing the salaries to be competitive with St. Lucie. So we're spending all the money on training and St. Lucie isn't. And then we're losing our guys and St. Lucie is getting them. So actually St. Lucie is pretty smart. Like, let's save money on our training and pay our guys better because we're going to get the guys from Indian River County.
Right.
Well, Milo
I
went
would
to
almost,
St. Lucie.
yeah. Go ahead, John.
Well, Milo went to St. Lucie.
Yeah, he did.
Even
I
if-
almost want to think and propose maybe, we discuss, or maybe bring to citizens and maybe have, another discussion or maybe somebody will chime in here. Why don't we take the $3.4 million of CSAC money that's going to NGOs where they can fundraise their own money. If they get their private donations, good for them. If they can raise $20 million from Johns Island and Quail and private donations, go them. But why don't we maybe ask and petition our county commissioners and say, hey, let's take those CSAC funds and give it to our law enforcement or give it to our firefighters.
Absolutely. Now, about 4 years ago, I spoke to one of our county commissioners and I said, hey, why are we giving so much money to these NGOs? What about our veterans? What about our police officers? What about our fire? Well, you obviously don't understand what it is to be a commissioner because we're talking about children. Those are adults.
That's why,
I won't even tell you who said that to me, but that's the response I got.
Yeah.
So I do have a couple questions. I wouldn't mind getting everybody's thoughts on, if we're done locally, more on the national stage. Did you guys have anything else local you wanted to bring up before we wrap up? No, we're good. A lot of stuff's been happening in the news. Obviously, the looming threat of World War III, Civil War. Some people would think we're already in Civil War. I'd like to get your opinion, Jen and Kevin, on what we first saw in California over the last week or two, including the No Kings events across the country. I'd like to get your opinion on that, and then what we see taking place in the news with our president and his buddies like Elon and Tucker.
Well, first, let me say, we have been in civil war for many decades, since the 70s, 80s at least, and we've been at war with Iran for several decades as well. I mean, they've started hitting us in the 70s, and the fact that we don't acknowledge that they're at war with us, that's what happened. That's what 9/11 was about. They were at war with us for 10 years before we acknowledged that, hey, you're at war with us, we got to respond. And we can't afford to sit back and not recognize when we got an enemy who set their targets at us, literally or figuratively, whether it's our civil society or it's foreign countries. When they're at war against us, you got to recognize it. We can't be stuck with the semantics of what is war. It's if they're attacking us, if you get people who are attacking, whose stated goal is to destroy the family and to replace God with the government and to overturn our entire society, those of us who do not buy into that have to be able to recognize that and say, we're at war. You can't play nice and peace when you're at war. We got to respond to it.
So, like I've said on my other show, leading up to World War II and even World War I, the war had started long before you were able to sit here and say, this is World War I, this is World War II. Do you think we are in World War III now? Jen?
I think as a nation, we're divided. I mean, you just look at the United States, and then you look overseas. I think absolutely that it could be, a month we look back on this and say, absolutely, this is World War III that we're going through.
Kevin, do you think history will say that World War III was started in the early 2000s?
Well, I mean, your point is well made, and that is that in reality, the world continues to be at war. There's a struggles back and forth, and it eventually breaks out into violence and battles. But for the last 30 years, it's been individual, occasional attacks from Iran and from their Hamas and everyone else that they're funding.
Proxies, right.
Yeah, they're proxies. So that's been happening for a long time. It's going to continue to happen. We have to start recognizing that it's before the war is declared, we're still at war. And you have to stand up for things in your home, in your community, in your county, in your country, and in the world. You have to stand up for things continually, because if you don't, there are other people who are ready to impose their will and their worldview upon you. It's really it's really a religious thing. They have a worldview. They've actually done an amazing thing. They've convinced us for 30 or 40 years that because their worldview is atheist, it's Marxist, it's humanist, but they don't call it a religion. So everyone else who has a different worldview is not allowed to have a voice anymore. And so they've made secular humanism in its various forms the official religion of the country. That's the only worldview that's allowed to have a voice.
Right.
You're talking about Sharia law? You're talking about Sharia law?
No, I think he's referring to our civil matters here.
Right.
I think when it comes to Iran, though, what do you think we should do at this point? Do you think the president is in his right mind by just staying back, let Israel handle this? Or do you think we should take a more pressing role in finishing the job sooner?
No, I don't think it's our. Are you asking Kevin or me?
I'll ask. This is good for anybody.
Yeah, I think the president. I'm trusting Trump's approach right now, because Iran, the people there aren't bad people. They have the cabal there. They have the Muslim Brotherhood. They have these guys that are paying, but they're the elitists that want to change the world and want to create this chaos. But listen, I trust what Trump's doing. He's been a negotiator. He understands what's going on. We should not go in and start bombing Iran. He put the threat out there to stop bombing innocent people, stop targeting innocent civilians, or he is going to take manners. He's going, he didn't say he was going to war, but he just put a strong tone to it. And Israel needs to defend themselves. Israel needs to do their thing, but it's not our war. It's not our war right now. We have a war that's happening right here in the United States. And we've got enemies in the United States that are hoping that we get into this war, because that's going to be their call to have the fight within the United States. And
what would that do? What would that do to MAGA? Because if you've seen the interview with Tucker and Bannon, perfect into the bromance there, Tucker essentially believes this would be essentially the end of the Trump presidency. Not the end, but this would be what he is known for, and not for MAGA, but for war in Iran, just like George Bush with Iraq and weapons of mass destruction.
Not going to happen, Mike. That's not going to happen this time. I can tell you that for sure, because of the fact that he wouldn't have gotten involved and took all this. Went through all this, getting involved from 2016 all the way until losing an election that he supposedly lost, and then coming back again and doing this all over again. His legacy is not going to be he's taking us to the brink of nuclear annihilation. I know for sure. That's not going to happen. And then
that's not really his goal, but he's had a stated goal for a long time to make sure that Israel doesn't have. That Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon.
Iran doesn't. They're not going to get them. That's been the narrative since the early '90s. Is that that Iran's 3 to 5 years away from nuclear weapon. That was the 16-year plan for Obama and Hillary. That's the bottom line. I always say this on my other show, that if Hillary would have won in 2016, we wouldn't be talking about this podcast right now.
Mm-hmm.
We'd all be in little we'd be in little camps, FEMA camp. We wouldn't be having the freeze we have right now, because we have already been to war with Iraq and Syria and Iran and the Middle East, and it would have all started because something Israel would have done during Hillary's administration that would have triggered everything that happened in the Middle East, and we would have all gotten behind it and backed Israel to go to war with Iran and cause all this chaos and destruction. But we're not going to head to that place. That's not where we're headed. But we were headed to that. That timeline was changed. I can tell you that. For sure.
Yeah, and
we
America
were headed for that. There's 100%, and it's going to happen to where it's going to get scary to the point where it looks like we're headed to that, because we need to see what would have happened if he would have never won in 2016, and where we would have headed if that regime would have took over right now. I'm telling you.
My biggest thing is, I agree with Kevin. These people have been saying death to America since the 70s. They're radical fanatics that overtook one of the most modernized countries in the Middle East. This was the hub of progressivism in the 70s. Beautiful people, culture, wardrobe. This was like, you're looking at South Beach, California in the 70s.
They got
infiltrated. Iran, and they were infiltrated. They were overran, and I think it's their mess to clean up. Yeah. I don't blame Israel if they're in it for the right reasons. I don't 100% trust the regime in Israel either, because I believe they're dealing with a deep state initiative also. But they do have to defend themselves. And if your neighbor is saying death to you, and oh, by the way, we do have a bomb, or we're inches away from enriching uranium enough to hurt you. Me personally, take care of your own neighborhood. Yeah. But
Europe needs to take care of Europe sometimes,
But if Iran sinks the USS Nimitz, let's say Iran pulls it off.
Yeah,
I think I've got enough faith and trust in President Trump to
know who did it for sure.
Know who did it, and if it was Iran, to not make a business out of this, to not make a campaign out of this, and just take care of the job, because we've had the technology, we've had the intelligence, We know where he's sleeping. We could have taken out their nuclear program already.
100%.
And Israel can too. Let's not kid ourselves. Israel kicked the shit out of everybody around them in 7 days 40 years ago, right? 30 or 40 years ago. I forget what it was. So Israel can handle their own. And I don't think we should be trying to police Israel either.
You got to keep in mind
them
you got to keep in mind that Israel has something called the Samson option. And so what that is that if they're ever threatened by any type of situation, like Iran is going to threaten to bomb them with a nuclear bomb, they're allowed to launch like without any hesitation, without any asking for anything at all, any approval to launch a nuclear missile at anybody that they think is threatening them. So I just think, and I always say this, and I said this on the other show, is that it's going to be a false flag that's going to happen, that's going to put the situation in where it's going to look like Iran did something towards Israel or America, and they're going to make it look like we need to step in and defend Israel, when it really is the opposite situation, that's not what's going to happen. It's going to be a situation where Iran didn't do anything, and we're going to have to make that decision. You're going to have to let Trump make that decision is what's going to happen.
And that's it. I agree with Joann and I guess Mike both said that in the end, we picked an excellent person at this time to fill this role.
We have to.
He knows more. He's got the wisdom and the wherewithal. He can talk big. He will push hard, but he does not intend to, get out over his skis and get into a problem that doesn't need to be gotten into. Exactly. They will try and draw us into him. The biggest thing is they would, aside from launching a nuclear weapon, the next best thing for them is if we go in and knock out their ability to do nuclear weapons, because that's a provocative move that they can rally people on. So they're looking to rally people, even at the expense of their nuclear program for a couple of years, because they can always come back and restart it.
And most of the warmongers in Congress and the Senate are dual citizens of Israel. So you're going to find out if something does happen, and it looks like maybe Israel did do it. You're going to find out who the real dual citizen warmongers in our government are going to get weeded out, because they're going to be chanting rah, rah, rah. We need to go to war. We need to go to war. If some kind of a false flag does happen, that's what's going to happen. And you're going to say, oh, look who wants to go to war. Oh, look who wants to go to war. They're all going to show their faces. And that's what Trump's going to do. He's going to bring the swamp even more up to the surface, to where you're going to see these idiots that are getting paid to go to war.
Right. He's got a lot of access to intel that we don't see. Right. We're just seeing the surface of what he's doing. So, and we've seen him in action before. And this is really a touchy time in our history, because we have cells here in America waiting for the opportunity to come out. Look, we just had I call them the Islamic Brotherhood, buying 400 acres in Texas to start a compound where they can have their Sharia law. And when you think about it, Sharia law is their supreme law. They're living here in the United States, but they are not, the Constitution is not their supreme law. That's a dangerous body of people. We have 1 million Islamic Muslims living in New York City, and guess what? That city is the loudest when it comes to being against America and rallying and picketing, and they get violent in the streets. And that's like Brigitte Gabriel said, it's not the majority that you have to be concerned about. It's the minority, because it only took a minority of people to take down the Twin Towers. Okay, it didn't take a majority of them. The majority might be good, but the minority that's in that million people are the influencers. And Sharia law is here in the United States, and it is proliferating by multiplying families, and that group of people is growing, and the larger they get, the more intense these rallies become. Look at Vero Beach. Vero Beach had 400 people probably out there on the corner. We've never seen masses like that. And it's hitting Florida, it's hitting New York. They are infiltrating slowly. And we have worries right here in the United States, and
I
we
But a
agree.
lot of that is
focusing on-
paid. Those are paid protesters. And to your point about
And they were going from county to county because they were
Yeah.
scheduled to where
Yeah.
they can go from one
They
to
were
the
paid.
next.
A lot of those people were paid. They were paid.
and your point about Sharia law, about them not submitting to the rule of our Constitution. We have a large minority of our population that don't submit to our Constitution. They
Right.
selectively use the laws and the Constitution as weapons against this, but they are not willing to submit to those laws when it's not convenient, when it doesn't achieve their goals. So there are a lot of non-constitutional people here
Yes.
that we let run around.
And that's what I'm saying is we have a cell of groups waiting for that moment to strike. And they're using our American people that hate America to get it started. And when you see these rallies, they get bigger and bigger. We saw them burning cities. We saw them burning stations. We saw it now. They were burning cars in the streets and police. So they use those America haters, and they're using the resources they have in America to set the stage. And that's why Trump has to be so careful in how he handles Israel and Iran, because that, I think, is the torch, is the match to get lit. And if he lights it the wrong way, America is going to have its first war right here on our land against an enemy that has no passion, nothing for you. They will chop your head off. They will, I guess I need to watch my language now, but they will dismember you. They will do the most horrific things that you cannot even imagine, worse than MS-13. And
but to our earlier point, that war is already underway. We saw that in 2020, where they're trying to have another battle this summer. There are those people out there doing degrees of that. They're at war with us, and they're doing violent things.
That's the recipe and the cake, but the cake hasn't been finished yet. But all of that is the recipe leading up to it.
Exactly.
Can we agree, though, that any of these elected officials should be American citizens?
Absolutely.
I mean,
we should not have. We should not.
Citizens.
We should not vote anybody into our representative constitutional positions that have that power for the people to represent the people, that do not put the Constitution as the supreme law. Anybody that's a Muslim that puts Sharia law, like we had, who was it? Was it Ilhan Omar or was it Tlaib that swore on the Quran? That should have never happened. Never happened. That's right there. You're putting an enemy within.
Aren't all of these people in the succession of the presidency? Aren't senators in that succession, or did that change when they removed the Speaker of the House, or the Secretary of State, and added the Speaker of the House to the succession? Because as far as I know, I mean, your vice president has to be natural born because he's in succession to the presidency. I just find it funny that we can just vote these people in who don't have an allegiance to this country. I know we're running over.
To Troll's point, there should be dual residency in our government administration is de facto conflict of interest.
Yeah.
It's conflict of interest.
It's crazy. Shouldn't even be part of it. That's why I always say that you see these certain senators, and like Elizabeth Warren, she always wears purple outfits. That's to show allegiance to the Khazarian mafia, which is what they are dual citizens of. That's what Israel is, the Khazarian mafia. What runs
that
Israel.
Makes sense from the one in
She's always
Connecticut.
black with some. She's always in black with some sweater.
No,
on.
she's not. She wears purple outfits all the time. If you go back and watch her interviews or where she does, she always wears purple. A lot of them wear purple to show their allegiance to where
got
their
purple hair. The one
that could be her Indian tribe, though.
That too, huh?
That could be her Indian tribe's colors.
Oh,
yeah, right.
Her,
the
1% Indian.
Tribe. That's the Khazarian mafia. That makes sense. The Khazars, he's part of the Khazars. That makes sense.
All right. So, anyways, we've kept everybody out long enough. Jen, does Mom for Liberties have anything going on that we should share with our community?
Sure. So, you can join at momsforliberty.org. Click on the map, click on Indian River County. You can join us. We have 2 events that we're going to be doing next month. We are partnering with the REC to do a family fun night at the Heritage Center. All the information is on our website and on our Facebook page. And we are also going to be at the Sebastian Freedom Fest for the 4th of July. We'll have a booth there as well. So come in, spend some time with us.
So I don't think you explain it good enough, though. To join Moms for Liberty, you don't have to be a mom. It's a bonus.
You could be a dad, uncle, grandparent, community member.
And it's like $20, isn't it?
Yeah. So if you want to be with the VIP membership, it's $25 for the school calendar year. So we do August to August, and that gives you access to, our website. We send out emails. If we do any events, you get the front row. And then we also have a free membership if you just want to check us out, and you can join for free.
I think it was great. I think we joined as a family for 40 or 50 bucks, and it was my way of making a donation. And I think even if you don't have the time and you can't attend these meetings, why not get you a membership to Moms for Liberty, and it's your way of giving back.
We
Kevin,
appreciate it. Yeah, we're not one of these NGOs that raises $20 million. We make money from our membership and donations that people give. And I can tell you, our bank account with Moms for Liberty here in Indian River County has never been over $1,000. So we work on a shoestring budget, but we're engaged parents, grandparents, and community members, and that costs $0 to show up and do the work.
Right. We don't get any federal funding around here either. What do we got? Kevin, you got anything else before we wrap it up?
No, but if you have extra money, you can send me money at any time.
Okay. And John and Joann, we all have shows going on this week and last week. I want to do another shout out to the Connecting People and Places podcast. We're going to branch out and get some bigger names out there that could help, inform the public. The last one I did was with Sheila Matthews of Able Child. They're doing a new show called Shattering the Narrative. They're local to us, but they're also across the country in Connecticut right now. There's been some buzz in the circles about what happened yesterday in Milford, Connecticut, where a campaign worker, maybe not an official, assaulted one of our colleagues, CJ, with the Spark Free Press, and who was later arrested. Not CJ, but the guy.
Candidate for mayor. Candidate for mayor in Hartford.
It wasn't the mayor. It was one of the mayor's workers. The mayor was very good. The guy running for mayor was very nice with those guys, I guess. And it was just, I think he was a worker.
He was a mayoral candidate. He punched our what did you call him?
Our colleague.
Publisher?
Our colleague.
Yes.
He punched our colleague in the face and took his phone and threw it on the ground. The whole thing was caught on video, so we should be seeing it somewhere flying around Facebook in a little while.
Take a look at the Spark Free Press on X or Facebook, or Shattering the Narrative on X. You should be able to see that video. But everybody at home, make sure you give us a like and a thumbs up. Share the videos. If you have anybody you want to shout out, definitely shoot us a message. Do you guys have anybody you want to shout out in the school district or anything like that at the moment?
At this time, until my public records requests are filled and I get some answers, I'm just going to yield until maybe next week.
So the superintendent, I haven't asked you in a couple of weeks because I haven't been here. What kind of grade is Dr. Morse sitting at right now?
Oh, he's kind of pandering to the school board members of not, following what they're doing. I'd have to say, average. What do we do? 1 to 4. I'm going to say he's at a steady 3 right now until he can pick it up.
I think he's been averaging a B. I think you've been giving him a B.
Okay, so I'm putting him at a C until we figure this out. Yeah, there's a couple data sets, information that's going around that's not the same, and then with this whole kind of sliding it under the rug for the public comment stuff, and they've been talking about it for months, but there's other stuff that they've added and removed without talking about it and the legislative priorities. So I'm gonna give him and the school board right now a C. So.
Okay. That's all I got, guys. Anything else?
You got anything, John? All right. So everybody, thank you for joining us here today at the board report. Remember to hit the like, share, and subscribe tab to get notified when the board report goes live. And visit IndianRiverConnections.com to visit our network of podcasts like To The Point Podcast, TGI Now, the Connecting People and Places podcast, and Binford Chronicles as well. So the board report airs every Friday at 7 p.m. and make sure you check us out on Rumble, X, Facebook, and YouTube. Have a great evening, and thank you again for joining us.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for having us.
All right,
Thank
guys.
you.
Indian River Connections brings you the first source you can watch for truth on board decisions in Indian River County. The Board Report, where taxpayers and policymakers intersect. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform to get notified when we go live on Fridays at 7 p.m. Visit IndianRiverConnections.com for more. Sponsored by Gus Curran's House of Champions.